Welcome to Dark Character Profiler. Take a deep dive into the background and personalities of villains from books, video games, manga, and comics. Psychological analysis of some of the most deviant and heinous characters of all time. Now, here's Fulcrum.
Welcome to part 2 of my interview with author John Vines of The World is Angry. Originally planned as a 4-part series, I've condensed the scope. This will now unfold in 3 parts, with the next episode concluding the series. Today, John and I continue to explore his writing process and inspiration and life experiences that compelled the story. Without further ado, let's begin.
Dark Character Profiler.
How did you go about approaching the dialogue in such a way that it felt authentic while at the same time building the tension that you were building between all of the characters and then the serial killer?
Yeah, dialogue is always something I really like. Whenever I watch a movie or I read a book, I always focus on dialogue and how they're doing that. And it's kind of like when I'm writing dialogue, I always kind of go like I sound out the words. I read them out loud, saying, "Is that would that make sense? Would I say that? Is that like a conversation that I would have?" So I'm always analyzing that a lot and like putting it inside the paragraph a lot of times with the action or the feelings that they're writing. And I try to take notes. Like now, when I read a book and I'm reading a book, I just get amazed at some of the writers I'm reading. I go like, man, that's really great way how they did that. How they put the dialogue into like the feeling that the character's feeling. And it's always a struggle. I'm still learning. I think I'm always kind of learning in this aspect. But yeah, the dialogue, real simple. First is like I just take from conversations I have with my own real life, and then I just say like, is that something the real? Does that sound real to me? Or does that sound like sometimes you can be too intellectual or you put things so perfectly, but that's not how real conversation happens. Sometimes real conversation is messy. It's just like,
Right.
and then as you're trying to be funny too, sometimes like you pick on your friends because when the friends are talking, there's a lot of like banter. And I
Right.
wanted to put that in there at times, but then you also want to put the drama when there's something intense at times.
Mhm.
Um, and I think the dialogue for the serial killer was a challenge because he would just talk in monologue. He would just talk in long conversations.
Right. Like
So you got it.
I
Yeah.
noticed without going into any kind of like real detail,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
noticed in one particular part where he's talking to a character,
Yeah. Yeah.
he's just kind of going and going and going, and then the other character is like off in his head. And he
Yeah. Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
like, and then the serial killer kind of like is like, hey, are you there?
Yeah. What's going on? Yeah. Yeah, I think when I'm doing the dialogue, it's like you have to break it up too, and I'm still learning about that, like because you got some person who's talking, and
Hmm.
then all of a sudden, boom, this other character you need to have the reader go like, well, what's going on here? I don't want to just have this one person doing this,
Right.
so you got to bring this other person back in, and it's
Right.
kind of like I think a lot of writers I've taken from have done that, where you just have this really long dialogue, but then you got to shift back to another character, break it, and then go back and break
Right.
it and go back. And I think as a writer, I'm still trying to do that with like just paragraphs or a page where you just get inside this one of the character's mind and then it goes back to dialogue. Um,
Right. One specific instance where I didn't realize like what was happening. It was kind of more toward I think it was more towards the beginning, but
yeah,
some people were in like a restaurant or a cafe and they were discussing the serial killer by and using his serial killer name.
yeah,
And then out of nowhere, it goes from that to somebody's thought process. And they're essentially saying, people are still calling me that. Like, why? And
yeah.
then it goes right back to the conversation. I'm like, whoa, wait a second.
Yeah, I do shifts like that sometimes where it's just like I jump. And I think when I published, they didn't really do it. So what I wanted to do ideally when I was writing this, I wanted all the italicized print to be the serial killer. So
Right.
whenever you saw italicized print, it was that killer. That was
Right.
his perspective.
Yeah.
So I was trying to do that, and it might not have come across in the publishing exactly the way I wanted it to. But ideally, when I was writing and before I went down that road to doing the publishing, I italicized every part of the killer
Mhm.
just so you knew that was him thinking. And I think in writing, a lot of times you can do that when someone kind of digresses inside their mind.
Mhm.
A lot of times writers will just italicize that so you know, oh, this is some digression of this
Right.
character. So it's a shift.
I mean, I definitely got that sense that, like, once the italicized part hit, I was like, "Oh, this is something else, somebody else
Yeah.
outside of the main 3."
Yep, yep, that was my intention
Yeah.
doing that. I was trying to do that.
Yeah.
Hopefully, it came across for people. Yeah.
Well, I definitely got the sense, so.
Okay. Yeah. Good.
What would you say was the most difficult part of writing The World is Angry, and how did you overcome it?
Yeah, I think like I was talking before, I think the most difficult part was at the beginning. Like I said, I had this idea.
Right.
And I think for me, I mean, I'll try to answer this in different parts.
Mhm.
So that first part was definitely a struggle because it's like, oh, and before it's like I told you, I wanted to always write and I always had ideas, but I never saw them through. So I was like tired of being that type of person. So I had these three characters. I knew I liked character development, but then I was like stuck. I was like, I wrote the first chapter and I liked it, but I was like, okay, what am I doing next? And I think I actually wrote the first four chapters. I wrote the first 4 or 5 chapters that dealt with the characters, and then I was stuck. I say, okay, where do I go now? And then that's when I said, like, well, I need tension. All stories have tensions, like I've just been saying. So then I got the serial killer, and I got excited again. I was like, okay, this is great.
Right.
And I think what's a challenge for me is like, well, there's a couple challenges being a first writer. It's like at first I wrote just first names. And then I started thinking about that's not going to work. I got to put last names. I got to start building this story out and have last
Yeah.
names and stories behind that. So I struggled with that at first because I was like, oh, now I got to come up with last names. So these are like little simple things you just think about. But then I was like, well, I don't want to name the character yet because I just didn't want to do that. And I didn't want to name the serial killer
Mhm.
until later in the book. And as I was writing the book, it's like, well, now I need to introduce them. I can't just because I was doing research saying like, well, are there any books out there where you never know who the narrator's name is? And there are books. I can't remember them per se,
Mhm.
but I was like, I don't think I want to do that. So I just had this whole thing like, well, every time I had an obstacle or a challenge, like, okay, how do I introduce this person now? I haven't done it. It's like, well, there was a part in the book that it lent itself to introduce the narrator with just a funny conversation, right? There
Mhm.
was a funny dialogue, or there was a piece of dialogue, and I was like, well, this is the time to do it. Just like the killer, there was a dialogue part of the book where he had a position just to introduce himself.
Mhm.
So he did that. So I think that was a challenge, but like every challenge, it's just like when you're writing a book, you have this kind of like, your options based on your framework. I'm doing this, it's going to either lend myself to go this way or this way.
Right.
So I did that. Other challenge wise for me was just making sure every paragraph was going. It wasn't just me going nowhere. I wanted to go somewhere, but so how do I lead that path? How do I start a chapter? Which I try to start a chapter, which is some kind of thinking that the one of the characters is having, and then it goes from there to the end of that chapter. Because like I told you, I had the name of chapters. I don't know why. I just had these interesting words in my mind. So I say that's the name of the chapter. And then I like how certain authors that I read, when they name a chapter, that title comes somewhere into the chapter. So I always wrote thinking, okay, that title of that chapter is going to be part of a dialogue or part of something in that chapter.
Right.
So a lot of authors have done that, and I like that. And all these sayings I had something to do with like just a feeling one of the characters had towards this tension of like death. I mean, that these people were going down. They were going to either die or live in this
Mhm.
whole process of the story.
Right.
So it's like those were challenges, but I just put a lot of thought into, okay, I'm going to write this character. And I felt comfortable writing the character of the serial killer in the sense that like I say, I really like sociology, philosophy, and just the way people view the world. And the world is kind of a mess. And that was what I was trying to say with this part too. It's just really ugly sometimes.
Right.
And when we just kind of what's the meaning of all this sometimes? And I mean, what are we trying to do with our lives, and what's our goals and the endpoints, if you will? So I kind of wanted to put some of that in there, even from the serial killer's point of view, even though we're supposed to like not like him. And
Right.
but sometimes you kind of see like, okay, I see how you view the world. It's messed
Mhm.
up. Doesn't mean we do what you're doing, but I can kind of get it.
Right.
So I think my challenge was how do I make chapters more full or fuller? So I wanted to have a story behind some of the characters. What made them who they are today in the present moment? So I think I peppered that in with certain characters about what led them to Houston and what they did before they came to Houston. So there's backdrops about each character that made you realize more about them, their
Right.
history. So, and then and there were moments in the present where they go like, "Oh my God, my past history is going to do the same thing that it did in the past, and I was hurt by that so badly, and I'm going to be hurt by it again."
Right.
It's just kind of like this thing. Sometimes with life, you just feel like, "Man, this happens again. I've already had this bad thing happen in my life. I can't believe I'm going to have to go through this again." Right?
Right.
So it's kind of I was trying to do that as well, and that's the challenge. It's like, okay, that's the creative process. Okay, oh, I need to bring out this character more. So what am I going to do with his timeline, if you will?
Mhm.
So it's kind of like that. So
Okay.
those were a lot of challenges.
Can you talk a little bit about your research process? Like, for example, some research you might have conducted on serial killers or the locations in which the murders took place, you know, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So to be honest with you, I didn't do a lot of research on serial killers. I just kind of used my own imagination. A
Okay.
lot of people would do a lot of research
Hmm.
on this type of subject. Like I said, I read the book by Eric Lawson, and I would just do searches about, oh, this killer. Like, yeah, you said Jeffrey Dahmer. I mean, yeah, we knew about him and we learned about this. So a lot of things I just based on like reading from the past. I didn't really dive down deeply into like serial killers per
Hmm.
se. Based on locations, a lot of the locations in the book I've actually been to and I
Okay.
spent time there. So I just draw off on my memory of how I felt in those places, kind of like a journal, like feelings there to describe those places. But a lot of times I'll also kind of get on the internet and go back to those places and really just try to look at images or pictures or look at maps.
Hmm.
And then I'll just try to write from that, if you will, and try
Hmm.
to do it in a descriptive kind of fictional way. So that's a process that I do when I'm writing about places. The Houston places, I just thought were good places to discuss and talk about because I'm familiar with those places too.
Right.
But also the end of the book, there's a part of Houston and I'm on Instagram and there's this guy on Instagram who goes to places in Houston that are abandoned.
Oh, that's cool.
So I said, this guy's going to be in my story.
All
And this
right.
guy actually, this guy actually became famous just recently in Houston because he went somewhere and it just became viral. He went to this one location in Houston and it went viral. And I was like, that guy's got to be, I got to make him a part of my story because I was struggling with the killer always has the upper hand in the story, but the
Right.
protagonist, the friends have to find a way to beat him because he's really good, but they got to find a way to beat him. So I had to put all these kind of different parts of the story. And this, I was just randomly on Instagram and I saw this guy and I was like, and he just does all this stuff in Houston. I was like, he's a part of it. I put him in there. I didn't put his name, of course. I changed the name, but
Right.
I used that.
That's cool though, that you could like pull from a real world like person as inspiration kind of for a
Yeah.
certain aspect of the book. That's
Well,
really
it's
awesome.
helpful. I mean, it's kind of just lucky in a lot of ways, but it just happened by like luck. I just like, and it helps. I mean, it makes the writing easier when you can something like that can happen, right?
Right. Definitely.
Right.
What was your creative process for the gripping plot twists that you kind of put in there? How did you come to like say, "Oh, this needs to happen," and it's something nobody's gonna expect?
I think for me, it had to happen.
Mhm.
the connection had to happen. I think the story would be more boring if you just had these separate four characters doing whatever. For
Right.
me, I had to have
They had to be
all of
linked.
them. All of them. Well, yeah, they had to be linked. But how do you deliver that link?
Yeah.
And then and I discussed the link at different parts of the book too, because it's not like, oh, I just talk about the link all in one part and then boom. All right, you got the link.
Right.
No, it had to be like, it had to come at different parts and it had to be layered, if you will.
Mhm.
So I tried my best to do that. And actually, when I was doing it at first, I had to rewrite certain parts because sometimes with writing, you write a part and then you go back and you say, "Oh, damn, I messed up. That part that I wrote earlier doesn't make sense with what I'm writing right now." So
Mhm.
I had to actually, there were two characters, not the main characters, but two other characters. I had to change completely because I wrote different characters as I
Wow.
was trying to make the links between like the killer and the protagonist. I initially had him doing something different. And then I said, nope, that's not going to work. I've already written this in the past in the different part of the book that I want to keep.
Mhm.
So I had to be creative again and say, "Oh, okay, based on this character and that character's history, I'm going to bring part of that character's history back to this part,
Mhm.
and that will make more sense. It'll add more to the story."
Mhm.
And a little bit of like as the reader's reading, going like, okay, what's he going to do now with this? That he's bringing this character's history, part of this character's history, to what he's doing right now.
Right.
So that was kind of like I was trying to think about that. I mean, it's funny when my son read the book, he told me that you did this too early. So some people are critics in different ways, right? So
Yeah.
because I was thinking you would do this at the end of the book. Kind of wanted to do it. I mean, because there's certain stories like Seven, you know who the character, you know that things come out pretty quick.
Yeah.
But he has a motive and he has a direction that he's going towards.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
How important was the concept of an unreliable narrator in the story if you used it?
Unreliable meaning he's kind of like insecure about what he's doing and his direction.
So an unreliable narrator is kind of somebody who they almost can't be trusted. Like,
Oh, I see what you're saying.
yeah. So like trying to think of some stories that might have used an unreliable narrator. Like
So, in,
so Patrick Bateman from American Psycho. He's an
yeah,
unreliable narrator in that entire book slash movie.
yeah.
He is the
So, yeah,
narrator of the story, and he's very unreliable because he's using manipulation, he's confused about
yeah.
certain things, like, you know.
Yeah, I mean, so my narrator. So, did you have a sense? I guess I'm trying to explore this a little bit more. Did you have a sense that that narrator might also be the killer? Is that what you're saying about the unreliable narrator at
Um,
first? Because there's no name, right?
right.
There's like he's nameless.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean that was like when I was first writing. Some people who read the draft, they felt like that. They felt like, is this guy a part of it? Yeah, because you don't know, right? You don't know if he's imagining himself, and that's actually pretty interesting. But I don't know if I went that deep into it.
Mhm.
But yeah, this narrator is kind of like telling this story, and you don't know who he is at first,
Mhm.
and then you don't know until later. Okay, so I can see how you're going down that road, and
Yeah.
because there's two nameless, yeah, at the beginning of the story, there's two nameless characters, and you go like, okay, maybe they're the same person.
Right.
So yeah, there's that type of sense, and I think, like I said from earlier drafts, other people were thinking that. So I get it. It's funny how when you write something, in my mind, I'm going down this road, but I can see how other people go like, okay, maybe it's this.
Right.
So I get that, and but it does come out later, if
Yeah.
you will, and that
Right.
maybe that's part of some twist in the story. Um,
Well, I mean, like, so the unreliable narrator can be somebody like a known character or
yep,
an unknown narrator. In like the example for American Psycho, we know who the narrator is of the story.
yep.
It's Patrick Bateman, and he is the most unreliable narrator, if I would say.
Yeah.
Because I mean, like from his perspective throughout the movie at least, he's like, the grand scene at the end where he's like shooting at cop cars with a pistol and they're blowing up. Like
Yeah.
and shooting at helicopters with a pistol. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. Unrealistic things like, Can I believe this? Can I believe this
yes.
is happening?" Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So
Yeah.
that's kind of what the unreliable like they're unreliable. You can't
Yeah.
trust everything that they're telling you.
Yeah, and I guess that's perspective with anything. Like even this narration is like it's all about perspective. Like
Yeah.
you're what you're telling and what you're describing to someone, is that truthful? Is that like can it be trusted?
Mhm.
So yeah, yeah, and yeah, I get that totally. So, but I guess for me, this narrator, I think for him, I don't think he has secure. He doesn't have the self confidence yet, and I think as the story goes on, he's trying to develop that, and he's trying to
Right.
show that because he's not the strongest character per se in this chase, right?
Mhm.
He feels very, and there's descriptions about his own insecurity with himself in how he feels himself in the world.
Mhm.
So, but towards the end, he's going down a path that is going to make him feel like he's stronger, you know. And that kind of set it up. I mean, I feel like this could be a series in some ways for these characters, and that's what I was trying to do with this whole progression, the arc of the story,
Right.
if you will. Yeah. So that's just how I was kind of going about it.
Okay.
With, but I like that whole idea about an untrusted or narrator. That's an interesting one. I mean, that
Yeah.
kind of storytelling is very interesting.
Yeah, definitely. Maybe it's something you can consider for future.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a challenge.
Yeah. Did the writing process change you in any way? And if so, how? Like,
Uh,
go ahead.
yeah, for me, the writing process is kind of twofold. So for me, being able to find words that capture my feelings or emotions based on the characters
Right.
is almost therapy for me. Like when I have a really good writing day, it just I felt like I was talking to a psychologist, but the psychologist is me. It's kind of like I'm just talking and I'm like, it just felt like a release. It felt
Right.
good. So it changed me in that way where it's just like when you're really, the way I describe it is like any activity. If you're really focused and like on that thing, it feels really rewarding when you can do it.
Mhm.
But also with the writing process, sometimes I get too involved in that. So the people in my lives, I can't shift sometimes. So that's kind of a bad thing where you go like, I'm just into it and I'm thinking about it. And then I'm supposed to be relaxing at a cafe with a friend or your life partner or whatever. And you can't make that shift. So sometimes the writing process can be exhausting in that way because
Yeah.
you're like, I'm trying to get to the end. I've got another 2,000 words. It's
Right.
like you feel like every day this is your goal. I want to have 1,000 to 2,000 words or whatever. That's just my process.
Yeah.
And then you're just like you're grinding away, but you got to have these points where you just say, like, "Oh, I got to just dial this back."
Yeah.
So that's kind of I like it because when it's going well, it's like for me it's like meditation or therapy. It just feels great.
Mhm.
But then it's like, okay, I'm too involved in it, so get back, get away from it, take a
Right.
break,
Take a
that
break.
kind of thing.
But then I could see how you would also be like, "Well, I don't wanna, like, forget any of the ideas that I have in my brain," you know?
Yeah, the approach I took on that, I have an approach on that, and I always borrow from people I admire, like Hemingway.
Mhm.
Hemingway used to always say that he would write to a certain point every day,
Mhm.
and then he would end that point, but he had a number of other ideas that would be the starting point for the next day. So
Right.
he wouldn't try to write everything to an emptiness.
Right.
So sometimes you can do everything, you get everything done, but then you don't know what you're doing next. So, and I have that. I used to have that fear where I'd forget something. If I'm going to forget something, I'll write it down. I'll write down notes, but when you're doing a story, a lot of times when you're so involved in it, you know exactly. Well, for me at least, I know exactly what I'm going to be doing the next couple of ideas, and
Mhm.
they don't leave me. They stay. They stay with me because the story's already in place.
Mhm.
So I'm not fearful of that. So what I like to do is I like to write a certain point, and then I know based on what I wrote, okay, I've got this point A, B, C, D next, and I
Hmm.
can stop, but I already have that locked in my mind.
Right.
So that's kind of my process. But yeah,
So so with me and my podcast, I have this kind of unique podcast that not a lot of people are really doing, where I take a fictional character who is morally ambiguous or a villain or, some kind of, psychologically intriguing enough where I can take that character and basically psychoanalyze them as if they're a real person.
yeah,
And I notice for me, so I have a lot of my ideas at night when I'm supposed to be trying to go to sleep.
yeah, yeah.
And
That leads
so
to
like,
insomnia.
yeah. And so I'm like, if I don't write this down right now, I'm going to forget it by the time the morning comes, and then it's going to be gone forever, and now I can't sleep because I need to, you know.
Yeah,
So
yeah. I've
that's
been
kind
there. I mean, I've
yeah.
if I go like sometimes I'll be awake, mid awake at middle of the night, and I say, "Oh, I have this idea," and I go, "I'll remember it tomorrow morning." You don't remember it,
Yeah.
so I get it. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, it always gives me I think that's where a lot of my insomnia comes from.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Cuz then I'm like, oh, and then I open up Chat GPT and I'm like, "Hey, what do you think about this?"
Yeah,
Or
yeah. So yeah,
can
a lot
we
of times
walk through this concept?
when I'm in the middle of writing, I do that at night though. When I'm in bed, I'll be thinking about what I wrote, and then I go like, "Well, this has to happen next, or this has to happen next. What do I want to do? This is
Mhm.
what I'd like to do." So I kind of have these conversations with myself, if you will. But they usually, for the most part, they've been staying with me because like I say, when the story's already in place, you only have a certain number of pathways you can go down. At
Mhm.
least for me. So they're there. It's like if you're watching a show
Right.
and you're watching a series, you know the series and you remember it. So for me, it's like I'm building something and I'm remembering it, and I know what options I have in front of me with the
Right.
storytelling, if you will.
Right. Okay. So now I kind of want to, and I know you kind of talked about like, oh, inspiration a little bit, but I wanted to ask a few questions about like inspiration and personal experience. So
Mhm.
I know you said that writing, at first you thought that writing, you had to have like inspiration just to write, but then you were like, well, I also kind of have to have like an outline first, right?
Yeah.
So like what was your initial inspiration for The World is Angry, and then like what started, and then how did your inspiration change?
Yeah. So I think. Well, the name of the book first was Houston. That's where I was from. So
Right.
it's just like I have these three characters, and they live in Houston. So it kind of started from that because that was the name of the first chapter, right? So
Right.
like I said, I just had this like I knew I wanted to tell a story, and like I said at first, I wanted to have a drama. I wanted to just have a drama that goes into these people's lives and what they're doing, and just try to be so descriptive, like one of these classic stories you might see.
Right. And
And
like with the intricate complications and all of
yeah,
that.
and I knew I wanted two guys and a girl, so
Right.
that always can put tension in there. And I guess at that point I was like, well, the story's not going anywhere. So for inspiration, I just said like, well, we're gonna have a killer type story, and I was like, oh, a
Yeah.
serial killer. I mean, that's always interesting. So that was my inspiration, and then it kind of became alive at that point, how to build that. And I thought at first, I'm just kind of a typical serial killer that's just going through the US. And I started thinking, well, I want this serial killer to be different because a lot of times you think of the backwoods or you think of the country and think about just these bodies being dumped in a pond or a lake or something. I was like, no, this killer is more extravagant. He needs to be in the city. He needs to
Right.
be public.
Kind of
So I was like,
like
I'm gonna make
kind of like Ted Bundy. He was
yeah,
kind of, or like Ed Kemper.
yeah. Like he didn't want to hide his victims. I wanted this
Yeah,
person to be like, he's not hiding his victims. He's putting his victims on display.
right.
I was like, that's got to be, because there's like that whole thing about like knowing where you are at a certain time.
Mhm.
Like there's certain moments in your life where something so awful happens and
Right.
it burns in your mind. So I
Yeah.
wanted that part in there. And then yeah, all these inspirations coming. So for some reason I always like to do different things. So I was trying to learn code at some time and that's how this the coded blood killer thing came out, because everyone starts off with "Hello World." So I was like, oh, I'll put that in there. That's kind of intriguing, and
Right.
that's kind of like everyone has to have a name. Like if you have a serial killer, you got to be known for something. So you
Yeah.
got to have this like little name that the reporters are going to place there.
I like how the media has dubbed him the cold-blooded killer, but then
Yeah,
he doesn't think of himself that way. He's
yeah, no,
like,
totally.
I'm not doing it. It's not a code. It's just a message. But
Yeah,
like a message in like certain not in the same way that like a code would be for like
yeah,
a
exactly.
computer.
Yeah, and that's the thing with like communication. Sometimes it's like this surface level, but it grabs everyone's attention because it's an
Yeah.
attention grabber. But for him, he didn't realize, he wasn't smart enough to realize, oh, what I'm doing is going to be taken this way. He
Right.
thought, oh, I'm being creative. And I think that's why with the other people, he became more creative with what fascinates him with life.
Right.
Because each of the things he did was, there's a reason for him doing it. And it's how he viewed life. And these kind of Greek mythology is like a
Right.
big reflection on like how life to him can be.
Would you say that because like he changed his messaging so that instead of it coming off as like code, he changed it in a way that would portray the mythos of
Hmm.
the
Yep.
Greek mythology instead of like code? Like
Yeah, it wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't like the people that he interacted with, he saw them in that mythology.
right.
So then he said, I'm going to make you into that art.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like he was taking, oh, you're like this character. So you're going to become this character, and I'm going to do it. I had to kill you. So I had to
Right.
kill you to display this.
Yeah.
That was his thought. That was his thought process.
Right. I could see
But he,
how the frustration of being called the cold-blooded killer
yeah.
would like force him to show like no, this isn't about a code. It's about art.
Yeah, I was playing with the cold-blooded killer. I mean, it's obvious.
Yeah.
Like people can be a cold-blooded killer. So I was like,
Yeah.
"Oh, I'm not going to do cold-blooded killer, but I'm going to fictionalize this and put this situation where, oh, code instead of cold." But people make that connection, say, oh, "Okay, I get it." That's what a
Yeah.
reporter would do. Like the media would be like, "Oh, we're just going to play on this expression that everyone knows, right?"
Right.
So that's kind of where I was going with that.
Okay.
But then he
Um
also has a code at some point that like the reader should be like, "Oh my god, this is happening
mhm.
with one of the victims." So,
Right.
yeah.
So, how did your personal experiences help shape a story?
Yeah, I think the friendship part coming out of me was really involved at the beginning part of the book.
Mhm.
Like that was, I think, as a writer, I think, I don't know, I have my own opinion on this, but I think the first book you write, you kind of draw on your own experiences more. I just finished my second book, and I was trying to be more creative. It's like what I'm trying to say is that that first book, you just get everything that's inside you out there because
Right.
that's what you have.
Mhm.
And then you can be more creative with the next line of work because you've got to draw on other things. And then that's where you use your imagination more.
Mhm.
So I think with this one, I definitely, like I say, all the characters are kind of a part of me. I can see a part of me in each character as I'm writing, because that's just my perspective and what I'm trying to put out there, viewpoints, if you will.
Mhm.
So I'm not. So that's kind of like I did draw, and like I say, there are a lot of places in the book I've been there and I spent time there,
Right.
so I knew those places like kind of intimately in some cases, if you will. So yeah, it was a lot of drawing, and I made references to certain people, like certain stories I had with or events. I kind of peppered them into the story.
Right.
So like some of my friends who read the book, said, "Oh, I remember that," or something like that. Yeah.
Or,
But
oh,
I would twist it a little bit.
is this based on a little bit of me?
Yeah. Yeah, so it's kind of like that sometimes where you just have to exaggerate. I mean, we all exaggerate stories. So it's not like that story happened exactly like that, but
Yeah.
you took a part of it and then you kind of made it more creative, I guess.
Right. Is there one specific character that you resonate with on a personal level, or was it like you said, or is it more of I see, like you said, you see yourself in all of the character, like certain aspects of yourself in all of the characters, or does
Um,
one specifically resonate with you the most?
Yeah, so I think, like I said, with the psychology, philosophy, and viewpoints on the world, we
Mhm.
can all be a little bit like view the world as an ugly place. So I think at times I really was kind of taking those ideas in society and portraying them in the antagonists. So I could see myself making those arguments, just like the antagonist was doing, the
Mhm.
killer. I mean, I'm not saying I'd kill people. I always said I wouldn't do that, but
Right. Like,
I it's a debate. Like I can see like, oh, the world is this way or the world is this way. And it's like, why can't we be better? So I can see his point. And like, for example, one of the mythologies is like, it's a story of just about how you're so close to something, but you're still so far away. It's
yeah.
like, and I think that's a lot of times in life we're that way where we're just trying for something, we're trying for something, and we're so close, but it's like it's still not there. So you feel like you're being punished by the
Right.
gods, if you will. But Greek mythology is all about being punished by something that's beyond you, right?
Right.
So I try to discuss that. I mean, that's always on my mind in a lot of ways. But there's other characters who are strong. Like I try to draw this character as a strong person, and when I write that, I like to think of myself being strong at certain points, but maybe I'm not as strong as I think I am. So that I write another character and his insecurity.
Mhm.
So it's kind of like sometimes you're writing characters and you go, "That's who I'd like to be. I aspire to be that type of person, even though I'm not that type of person." Like when you see a character on a story, a TV show, or whatever, you go, "Man, that character's so cool. I'd like to be that person." Right?
Right.
But a lot of times, that's the fun about writing. You can write something that, yeah, this is the person I really like. This person. That's the kind of person I wish I was. So yeah, I mean, I think the guys identify. I always like to try to write a woman character, but you have to put yourself in that mindset. And I don't know if I do that as well as I want to do. Like I envy some writers who can like do that gender switch where they can write the main character that's different from their gender, and they can really get into that person, and it's believable, right?
Mhm.
So I try to draw like the woman character in the story is I just try to draw on other powerful kind of women I've had in my lives that really influenced me, and I mean, and when you can have characters you don't like and they're based on people you just don't like in real life, right?
Right.
So you all always have these references, I guess.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Did you, well, I guess you kind of already answered this. I was going to ask if you had any writer's block or moments of creative doubt. So, like at the beginning, you kind of said, well, this isn't going anywhere. And then you took, like,
Took months.
however,
Yeah.
yeah, to come back to it. So, would you
Um,
consider that a writer's block moment or a moment of doubt?
Well, it's a moment of things getting in your way too. So I have a day job, right? So
Yeah.
sometimes you get busy with that and you're like, I don't have time to write. Like there were certain moments where I had to spend a month doing some work that wasn't related to writing. And then once that died down, I didn't have anything. So for me, I did have moments. You have moments where I feel like at this point, when I'm coming up with stories, I always get fearful that, okay, I'm going to run out of stories. That's always a fear. Like,
Hmm.
okay, then what do I go? Where do I go from there? But with this book, like I said, I always had a goal of trying to write a certain amount of words each day.
Hmm.
But that didn't always go as planned. Some days you would start and you'd be like, oh man, this paragraph is hard. Or, okay, I finished this paragraph. What's the next paragraph? And so there were days, what I call grinder days. There were days where things just flowed. Like I was
Right.
going, I knew what I wanted to write and I was doing it and I was going piece by piece by piece. But there were some days where I go like, all right, I got to grind away. This isn't going to be a good day. And if I get 800 words instead of like a goal of 1500 words, then that's okay. And I would just say that's my grinder day. That's my day just to get through it, just go go as best I can. And at the end of the day, say, okay, that I needed that day to get to the next day, which will be better. So
Right.
I call that kind of my stumbling process, if you will.
Mhm.
But it's a process I have to go through.
Yeah. I feel like every
So
writer kind of goes through that where they're just like off that day, or like the creative juices just aren't flowing as much as they were a couple days ago, or whatever. And then they push through it, get some work done at the very least, and then the next day they're like, I feel much better, and now I can even maybe go reread that section that I just wrote yesterday and see if I even like it or
yeah.
need to change anything.
Yeah, exactly. And I always try to take 2 days off. I try not to make this a 7 day. So it's just like a weekend. People have weekends. I try to be like, I got to take a 2 day break. So
Right.
yeah.
Dark character profile.
The world is angry, but it's not done speaking. That is where we will pick up again next time, where we will go even deeper into the psychology of the world is angry. Until then, if you found this episode compelling, like it, follow or subscribe to Dark Character Profiler, leave a comment below, and share it with someone who isn't afraid to look darkness in the eye. See you soon.
Thank you for listening to Dark Character Profiler with Fulcrum. Listen every other Tuesday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Podcasts. Humanity was not meant to live this way. Society is left to the mercy of murderers and cutthroats. Hear Paige Zaplin Dam's epic tale brought to life in an audiobook. For years, Slade had felt secure in the forest. I am from simple, humble beginnings. I was raised in the Ironwood by an Ogress, an Anaral. He saw immediately that she was beyond a healer's aid. Even a skilled witch could not help her recover from losing so much blood. Mother? Slade thought he wanted revenge. Instead, he got redemption. A kingdom of ash and steam, The Ogress's Son, a dystopian neo-Dark Age fantasy, narrated by Rich Fraser. Now available on iTunes and Audible. I promise you I will find whoever did this and avenge you, Mother.